those from lower socioeconomic areas, most unfortunately, are the ones with low life expectancies, the ones with a poor quality of education, and horrifically, a poorer quality of life. And poverty is always a problem in our society. So what do countries do to solve it? They do things like provide state support to people, they do things like give aid to the countries that need it, and they try their best to throw as much money at a problem to solve a problem which so many throughout history have decided that's not the way to do it. So people come up with solutions, and they say things because the accepted way to deal with a problem like poverty is to throw money at it, that we should cut funding from other things. Things like space exploration, for example. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about. Because it has been suggested throughout time that investing in things which seem frivolous, such as space exploration, is an irresponsible action for states to take when they have members of their society and other societies globally dying in poverty. But we don't think that's the case, and I have two reasons why. Because first of all, we think that throwing money at a problem can't be the way to solve poverty, and I'm going to show you why we have reason to show that that's true. And second of all, I'm going to show you why investing in something like space exploration actively encourages that poverty to disappear. So let's look at each of those in turn. So first of all, the idea of poverty and why it exists, because you have to understand that in order to understand how to solve it. So let's look firstly at developed countries. So these are countries that have generally high GDPs, and these are countries which in general have enough money, you would think, to get some of the people who live in things like child poverty, which for example is said to sit at 50% in a developed country like Scotland in cities like Glasgow. So why does it exist there? Well, we think throughout history it's been decided that it isn't simply the idea that a country has to have enough money, it's that individuals are put in a circumstance where they can't escape it. We look at the reports in the 1800s by philanthropists such as Booth and Rubbertree, who go around Britain and decide that it is the social position of people which keeps them in the idea of being poor and having that poor quality of life. And that's echoed now, because it's hard to escape poverty. That's the idea that now across places like Europe and the US, our graduate rate is at the highest it's ever been, yet so is our unemployment rate. So it simply can't be that there is an easy way to escape poverty in those terms, because you need things like jobs. But second of all, I think the idea of less developed countries, we think there's still a problem. These are struggling economies because they are new or they're newly independent from the hands of the evil colonial states such as our own. And that's really difficult for those countries because they are less developed in a way like technologically, and that means they're less able to compete on an international scale, which is what they need in order to become strong economies at the moment. And we see things also like as a result of this, older professionals leave. So for example, the Guardian report shows that there's more Malawian doctors in Manchester than there is in Malawi. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, you can have as much money as you like, but it is unlikely that that is necessarily going to solve the problem. And you see that in countries like Finland, when they have 23 times lower child poverty than a country like the US, yet their rates of GDP is much, much lower as well. The point is you can't solve like that. So how do you solve it, and why is space exploration therefore never an irresponsible thing to invest in? Well, you solve it through things like employment. You solve it through things like giving jobs to the thousands of graduates who are struggling to survive because they can't find one, because that is the way that the economic system works. You do it so that you can start up international companies which allow people in developing countries to have factories, to have big international companies investing within them, setting up factories where they live so they have a job to go to. And how do we get that? Well, let's do things like space exploration. We see global poverty has halved over the last 30 years, and technology has more than doubled. That's things like cell phones, that's things like computers. Why is space exploration important there? Because that's how it works. Space exploration has allowed people, due to things like the space race, to send satellites into space and to allow industries such as the cell phone and the internet to exist, right? What does that do? So it sets up things like phone shops, which in itself is quite a nice thing to have if you're somebody who's looking for a job to sort of make your way through university. More importantly, it does allow multinational industries to exist. This means you can have a company which feels fine with setting up its HQ in America, but doesn't necessarily just employ Americans. It employs the Scottish who live in the poorer areas of Glasgow. It employs the Southern Africans who work for it there. We think that's really important when it comes to a much more globalized society, which is one which we recognise that people have to live in today if they want to be able to survive. And that's why we think that poverty, although in general is decreasing, it continues to exist. Because there aren't enough jobs, because there aren't enough opportunities for the people who could use them in order to survive. But space exploration stops that. We see the idea that it's not just the astronauts who get a good deal out of this, it's the idea that it's everybody in society who does, because you set up new industries. But more importantly than that, when you see the benefit that investing in space exploration has, you see the benefit in technology. You see the benefit of investing in science in general. Now, given that in countries where they suffer the worst from poverty, it is also the countries such as Sierra Leone where they're suffering from epidemics and they can't get out of them because technology doesn't exist in order to save them. We think if in the long term people see that investing in technology has given them genuine actual responses and genuine actual results and that they have more people employed, we think that's going to lead to more investment in the long run, which means maybe the next time there's an Ebola outbreak, we might have improved technology to the point at which it could have saved the people who are dying. Ladies and gentlemen, space exploration isn't just about exploring space, it's about pushing an industry and pushing a sector which can actively save lives, which can actively save poverty. And that's why I believe that actually the most responsible thing the developed world can do is invest in space exploration, even in a world where poverty exists. Thank you.